All right. Is everyone ready? You good? Okay. I'll be speaking, and Director Ebersol, but Chief Dumas and Chief Ripka are here if there are questions to them or things that we can't answer, okay? We're here to announce that we will be sending over a legislative package to council. I think it's the day of tomorrow. This legislation will be introduced Monday, and it's in regards to the Sherwin-Williams project. We will have our basic incentive packages, although they are the amounts are larger and the duration of some of the incentives are longer, but there are usual packages, and they are a 30-year non-school TIF, which means the school will be held harmless in regards to this, and Mr. Ebersol will tell you about how they will actually receive an increase in revenue as a result of this. Economic Development Construction Grant, and that is a grant based on the construction, and I think there's over $300 million that we estimate the construction will be, and will help to retain all the current jobs and have a net increase in jobs. And then there's the Job Incentive Grant, and that grant is tied to the new jobs that are created through a formula, and that is the third incentive that we will be providing to them. Again, Mr. Ebersol will give you the details of them. I want to say this before I turn over to Mr. Ebersol, that Sherwin-Williams has been in Cleveland for 150-something years. It was founded here. It is their international headquarters, and it is they've been a good partner and citizen for the city of Cleveland on many of our major initiatives, one of which was the RNC Convention, the Republican National Convention. They played a key role not only in helping us organize, but to raise funds for that, and they've been part of the civic community for decades. So we're happy that we've reached an agreement with them, and we will be working with council as we go before the council committees to discuss the legislative package, and along with the Sherwin-Williams representatives. Okay, Mr. Ebersol.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. So we have prepared legislation authorizing 3 incentives that we'll be submitting to City Council for introduction on Monday. The first will authorize a 30-year non-school TIF for the proposed project site. Our anticipation is that the full-on development of the site will be over $300 million. We anticipate that the school district will benefit in excess of $4 million annually when this project is completed. We are submitting a construction grant in support of the project. The city's portion of that grant will be $13,500,000. That funds will be towards the construction of the grant and is tied to the retention of Sherwin-Williams jobs in Cleveland. And then we are submitting a job creation incentive grant. That term will be 15 years, will be an amount equal to 50% of the new payroll that is coming into the city of Cleveland. The grant is capped at $11,500,000. We're anticipating the creation of 140 jobs in the city once the project is completed and everything is consolidated. Those jobs are expected to bring about $12.5 million in payroll annually, though the company is still working on what their exact growth numbers will be, and so there's flexibility in there also. We're very excited to keep this company in Cleveland, and as the mayor indicated, we're using the same tools that we're using. This is just a significant project, and so the numbers are a little bit bigger. Thank you.
All right, questions? Here you go.
Can you guys offer some details detail on the TIF, specifically how does it work and what do you anticipate that TIF coming out with?
Sure. So the way that the TIF works is that for the 30-year period, all property taxes that are above the current baseline are abated. The company makes the payments of the full amount that they would make. The payment goes to the schools and the amount that they are due. So we anticipate to be roughly $4 million a year. The remaining portion is then rebated back to the company. So that number will probably be around $2 to $2.5 million annually.
How competitive did you have to be with other communities to keep Sherwin-Williams here?
We didn't focus on that, Harry. We really focused on what we believe to be a reasonable package that they could not say wasn't worth anything, and that's what we focused on. I know that the state of Ohio played a significant role, as you know, as an international company, and they could have gone anywhere. And the state of Ohio, through Team Neo Jobs Ohio and the package that they put together, played a significant role in terms of saying Ohio was the place. And then once Ohio was the place, then Cleveland, we just wanted to make sure we were there. And so we didn't look at another city in Ohio or another city in outside of Ohio. We just stayed focused on what we believe was a reasonable package that would be credible, and they would accept it as being a real, legitimate, credible offer to them.
How happy are you that they're staying?
Well, I'm happy in the fact that we're in the middle of a budget hearing, and of course that our ability to deliver our bottom line, which is services, is based on the revenues we receive. And this company produces significant revenues to our bottom line, and it produces significant revenues to the school's bottom line. So in that sense, in that business sense, I'm pleased that they chose Cleveland.
You said a reasonable package. What does that mean? Can you give us an actual number that you guys offer?
Well, he just gave it to you. He can give it to you again.
Yep. So again, we have a 30-year non-school TIF. We have a $13.5 million construction grant, and then we have a 15-year, 50% job creation incentive.
So, yeah, roughly back of the napkin seems about 100 million to 105 million.
So if you took the two grants itself, it's $25 million, and then the TIF is a little bit, the final valuation comes in, but $4 million and $2.5 million over 30 years, sure.
And the grant, is that coming from general fund?
It comes from what we provide economic development to do their job, and as economic development is part of the general fund, and we provide funds to them in order to staff, and we provide funds for them in order to do their job to grow, retain, attract businesses. And each year we're giving an estimate on what that would be. And so this would be, even though I think you have an estimate that you've given us that is in the routine thing, this is outside the routine. So the budget will cover the routine side, and this will this extra money out of general fund will cover this particular project. But again, I think we made up a decision whether we're bonding some things?
No.
We have not?
No.
So there is a possibility that some of the dollars may be bonded, and then we have a debt service over a period of time, which means it would not come out of general fund, it would come out of restricted income tax on the debt that we pay on the bonds.
You spoke, Mr. Mayor, about the schools being held harmless. I think residents of the city of Cleveland are very glad to hear that. Back in the day, folks could school and go into the mill to get a job. Anything in the works to make sure that the children in the city will be trained to take some of these jobs that will be created in Sherwin-Williams?
Well, let's look at it both ways. We're looking at the construction side. Sherwin-Williams, in our development agreement, has agreed to comply with all of our, as they have to comply with all of our OEO laws. But even more significant, as you know, state legislation and the state Supreme Court struck down our Fannie Lewis law that where we required Clevelanders to be 20% of the construction hours. Well, our interpretation of that is that when it comes to private development like this, not public works development, but private development, that the Fannie Lewis law is applicable. So we can expect during the construction to have at least 20% of those work hours be performed by Clevelanders. That's on construction. There's also in the development agreement a provision that they will be working with workforce development. Is that correct? And the workforce development will be working with them on jobs that are created, and trying to match up if they're creating a job over here of a certain skill level. How do they then find a person to fill that? That's where workforce development comes in. So on both of those ends, the permanent jobs and construction, we took that into account, and Sherwin-Williams is not only agreed to it, they actually were, there was no discussion about it contrary to that.
If I may add one addendum, if I may add this question, and that is, I was thinking more along the lines of STEM. The children that are in school now, those that will come now, and
Right.
Sherwin-Williams has been here well over 100 years. That means they're going to be chemists and scientists
Right.
and so forth for the foreseeable future. Anything that you have worked out with the school district or will work out with the school district to say our kids are going to be trained to fill these particular jobs?
Well, we don't just look at that as Sherwin-Williams. We look at that in jobs that are available in the entire region. So if Sherwin-Williams is not something specific to Sherwin-Williams, we look at what you just mentioned as opportunities for our children throughout the region. And as you know, just having a high school diploma and having a wish to be an engineer or chemist doesn't really get you anywhere. That's why Say Yes to Education is so significant, where basically our children who have that aspiration, that ambition, will have a real opportunity to attend college for basically nothing if in fact they start in the 9th grade with us and finish the 12th grade and graduate. Then Say Yes to Education will do that. And those children, or those young people who wind up with those career paths or expertise, we look at all of the region to be part of how do we absorb them in terms of how do we retain young people once they graduate, or they go somewhere else and then they come back, and we want to have them look at Cleveland as a career. So it's just not Sherwin-Williams on that. But it's not in a development agreement, if that's your point. It's not in the development agreement, but it's part of what we do overall.
Sherwin-Williams announced in September they were looking for new headquarters.
Mhm.
And you heard smatterings or reports of places around the country
Right.
as they're doing a national search. But to land it before January seems quite quick.
Right.
When were you comfortable that it was a matter of nailing it down rather than convincing?
Not until we got the development agreement down. We began to get more comfortable as time went on, because the negotiations were very serious on specifics. We got out of the big picture of it and the discussion of that big picture into the specifics of the site, the different things that may be associated with the site, and what you have to do to prepare a site, the a lot of other kind of details that and once we got into that, and I think that was what, late last year?
Late last year into January.
Yeah, once we got into that, our confidence was more that not only were we in the running, that it was basically ours to lose at that time.
Can you give us a sense of how big of a footprint this 1 million square feet is going to be in downtown Cleveland? That's a lot of
Right.
space. And how is it going to impact the skyline, city line?
Sure. So the company just now is starting their process, and I can't really speak for them on where the design is going to land up. But you're talking about, from our perspective, finishing off Public Square, the parking lots that are there on West 3rd Street, West 6th Street, becoming activated with new buildings on them, and so that's a great benefit to the city.
And you know, when you bring 3,000, 3,500 people from behind the Tower City area by the river, and you put them into Public Square, just the activity of that many more people moving around is significant, is very significant. And I know there's always been a conversation when I was in council about surface parking lots downtown and how were they the best, highest and best use of prime real estate in downtown Cleveland. That question has been addressed at this point because that's where this project will go, on those surface parking lots in the Public Square warehouse district. That is significant to build out on top of surface parking lots, and then to add another 3,000, 3,500 people right in an area where they can move around as opposed to be on the edge or in a place where they're not able to move in the same fashion they would be able to move here. It's significant. The location is significant.
That's what we St. Clair Superior downtown.
Yes.
Is that, yeah. You know, where they were supposed to build that right on Public Square, was that the Jacobs parking lot?
Yeah, the Ameritrust Tower.
Where they were going to build the Ameritrust Tower, and that didn't happen, I think, in the late 80s. And then, was it Mr. Asher?
Yes.
Who owned all of those surface parking lots just west of that? So it's all of that, which is probably about 800, 900, or 1,000 parking spaces.
So you guys talked about the 140 jobs that you're
Right.
going to be creating. Are you guys going to be losing any jobs to Brecksville?
No, we won't be losing any jobs to Brecksville. We will be retaining all of the headquarter jobs, and we will be getting at least 140 additional jobs that are associated with the headquarters. The major job increase was in the research and development side. That was several hundreds of job increases.
Yes.
So those increases that increase will be in Brecksville. We competed for that, but the logistics of having 70, 80 acres of land plus another large acreage for a headquarters we just couldn't do it in downtown Cleveland. But the research jobs, are they located over here in the old
So
place?
some people may be moved around,
Moved.
but the net result will be
The net result will be an
plus
increase.
140 jobs.
Okay, so
All right.
some people will be leaving the Cleveland area to
Yeah.
go to Brecksville.
If their job description fits the research and development side. But overall, for Cleveland, we will have an increase in employment. So they'll be moving people around and then bringing on additional people. And I believe they're consolidating jobs in Brecksville that were not in Cleveland or Brecksville.
Mayor, one positive might set off a negative, and that is people are going to complain about the lack of parking now downtown.
Right.
Construction starts. Is there a plan in terms of how the city will help manage what should initially probably be some
That,
disruption?
that was, that was a major concern of ours, of Sherwin-Williams. And when we look at parking, as I said, we will be losing 900,000 parking spaces. Those parking spaces accommodated people who work downtown, accommodated people who went to sporting events or special events downtown. So that's a major loss. And so currently what we're doing is we are doing an evaluation of parking downtown and a study that looks at what now is that new demand. What is that demand now, since we're removing all these spaces, and it's going to have, it has a ecosystem of its own, right? And so since we're removing, we're actually disturbing the ecosystem of parking. And so we're looking at that, and as we conclude that, we will be making a decision as to whether or not we will be adding additional parking here or some location where that will accommodate what the demand for Sherwin-Williams is, as well as sporting events or other people working downtown, those kind of things. So we are looking at that. It's not part of this deal. It wasn't a part of the development agreement. It's just a necessity that has to be done. So we are looking at.
When you say we, you mean the city of Cleveland?
Yeah, the city of Cleveland.
Additional spots, because that could be one way to help keep costs down.
What's that?
Could be one way to help keep costs down for parkers by adding more spaces on.
Well, we will attempt to, what we're looking at in the study is to see what is the demand to accommodate additional 3,500 people in one spot that would not probably park there, and to address those people who would park there but now have nowhere to park, and to address the demand for parking that would occur for sporting events or special events. So that's the study, and that study will help us determine what actions we should be taking to address that demand. We know it's going to be a demand, extra demand, and a huge disruption for a period of time.
Who is producing that study for you, and when are you expecting it to be done?
Well, we're doing it, or is it being done? We're in partnership.
Partnership.
And who's our partner?
GCP.
Greater Clean Partnership. Greater Clean Partnership. So they're conducting it, which you know is not a public record then. But it's not that was our design. It's just that they have they're looking at the same issue you raised. And so when you look at that, we partner with them, say, yes, if you want to do a study, we'll support the study, because we were looking at doing something similar. And they're doing it from a business perspective. And so when they come up with it, it will look at the new ecosystem of parking and from a business perspective and things like that.
I have a technical question on the grant issue.
Mhm.
Director Ebersol said that the city's portion of the grant is $13.5 million. I just wanted to double check. Is there additional grant money there, or?
The city's grant is $13.5 million as a portion of the construction project.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then on the TIF calculations, I know it's not an exact science because you don't know what the building is going to be worth until it's done and assessed, but what valuation are you using for the completed headquarters in order to make those projections for the schools?
Sure. So you can look at the project's about a $300 million project, so you can back out a valuation based on the construction costs, and that gets you to one number. You can look at, Key Tower is a building of similar scale. The 200 Public Square is a building of similar scale. And so you come 3 or 4 different values, and around $4 million is about where it all fits together.
For the
Annual.
schools on an annual
Annually,
basis,
yes.
about 2 to 2.5 that would go to the company in the form of basically a rebate.
Yes.
So when you put the legislation forward, is that TIF calculation schedule
So the technical proportion of the way the TIF legislation gets put together is that it states that the value will be abated, and then the schools will receive their share, and the non-school will receive the non-school share. So it's an apportionment of the future taxes.
Right.
It's not calculated out in advance.
And we won't see those
No,
calculations as
no.
part of what is released.
In the executive
Correct.
summary, it'll probably be some estimate in regards, but they're purely estimates because we don't know. But what the legislation will lock in place is not the dollar amount. Legislation will lock in place the formula. And so whatever that dollar amount is, based on that formula, is what it will be in actuality. But there are some estimates that he puts into the executive summary that is presented to council, because they'll ask the same question.
Any indication as to how council is likely to receive this proposal?
You got to ask them, Mr. Boomer. I know that the council president is supportive of retaining Sherwin-Williams. I don't know any council person who has said they're opposed to the retention of Sherwin-Williams, but it's always the devil in the detail. And I'm pretty sure when on the first hearing that y'all will be there in force, and you'll get a good indication as to where that dialogue goes. But in general, I think all of us agree that that keeping them here, it was an essential thing to do, that we've worked on it, and that we've come up with this, and our council will deal with it over there.
It does strike me the three key pieces,
Mm-hmm.
the TIF and the job creation rate are all based on future growth in revenue
Right.
rather than reducing the revenues you have coming in the door.
Right. Right.
The only thing you're really looking at being on the hook for initially is that construction.
Well, because in the end, it will be of benefit to us in terms of increased revenue, whether it's through property tax, income tax. It will be a benefit to us in terms of the people who will be employed in terms of construction, those kind of things. At the end of the day, we will have not only kept the revenues that we would have lost, but we will have increased revenues as a result of it at the end of it all. And for that, we provided these incentive packages. And they would pay for themselves over the life of the project, the life of the incentive packages over 30 years. It would pay for itself. Is that right?
Yep.
Anybody else? Well, I thank you very much. Thank you.